Hello and welcome to Beyond the Booth. I'm not Phil Harris, or there is Phil Harris. I'm not Randy Cunningham. I'll get it right. Randy's under the weather right now, so I'm stepping in for him. I'm the How We Change along with Phil Harris from WQSB, and our special guest tonight is going to be Coach Glen Hicks of the Sylvania Rams. Phil, how's your week been so far?
So far, so good. Had a good Easter. Looking forward to a great week. Back to work tomorrow, but other than that, I'm doing well.
Awesome, good deal. Let me ask you about your bracket real quick, and then we'll get Coach Glen Hicks in here, and we'll get him in here, ask him a few questions. So, Phil, how about your bracket? Is it busted? You still got teams in it?
Well, I really didn't pick one. I just had teams that I picked I thought would do well. I thought Tennessee would get to the Final Eight and lose to Purdue. Maybe the third best team in the country, but I just felt like Connecticut and Purdue were the two best teams. Other than that, you just kind of a jumbled up mess. But really, I didn't really pick a final bracket. I didn't really pick a Final Four. I just felt like Connecticut and Purdue would be there.
Yeah, absolutely. Coach Glen Hicks, are you with us?
Yes.
Good deal. Coach Hicks, how's your bracket doing?
My bracket, I've got Purdue left, and that is it.
You know, me and you are in the same brackets. So I wrote yours down. You had North Carolina, Auburn, Kentucky, and Purdue going to the finals or in the Final Four.
Well, I was stupid. I had Auburn, Kentucky, and I thought the SEC was much tougher than we showed. So it doesn't matter if you want to pick a bracket, find out who I'm for, and pick the other team.
Well, let me ask you real quick, Coach. With Bama, UConn, North Carolina State, and Purdue, how do you think this is going to end up being?
Well, I think I think Purdue and Connecticut are the two best teams in it. And I just think whichever one of the big guys can halfway neutralize the other. But, I'm not a Alabama fan. I'm an Auburn guy. But if Alabama shoots the ball the way they've been shooting it, they're going to give UConn a good run for their money.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll ask you one more question, then I'll turn it over to Phil. The last question is LSU and Iowa tonight, rematch of the women's championship from last year. Who you take on that one?
Gosh, I don't know. I enjoy watching Caitlin Clark play, but I tell you, LSU's got so many weapons. They may not have anybody that can go off and get the 40 line in, but they got a lot of kids that can get you 15, 20. So I just kind of think LSU's going to win the ball game.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that as well. Phil, what you got for Coach Hicks tonight?
Well, Coach, first of all, welcome. I've been looking forward to having you on. I've used a long time. I've been a basketball coach. Back when I called radio games at K98, I did a lot of your games back when you were at North Sand Mountain. So welcome into the show. It's been a long road for you. I want to ask you one thing. I know you finished coaching in 2019, and of course you got back into it as a volunteer basis, and then you decided to come back into coaching at Sylvania. Did you miss it, or did you miss the basketball games, or did you miss that camaraderie you had with the relationships with the kids?
Well, Cole, my son, of course, he was really, really good to me. He let me coach, and I get close to those kids. What was really funny, I coached some of them's granddads, and but about halfway through the year last year, I decided I either had to get back in it or get out completely. And I don't golf, I don't play. I don't fish, I don't golf, and I don't hunt. So I had to do, and I tore my knee up, so I couldn't run anymore. I had to have something to do. And I was actually going to Whitwell, Tennessee, and I told the lady up there that had hired me that if something came open in Jackson or DeKalb County, I would, I was coming back home, and Sylvania opened up, and I live 5 miles from the school, and so it was a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, well, that sounds. I mean, you sound like kind of the way Coach Paul Benefield thinks. I don't know how to do anything else, but Coach, he said, so that's the way I pass the time. So he didn't know when he was going to walk away. Well, Coach, of course, you graduated from Pisgah, went to school at Jacksonville. Then, of course, as soon as you finished at Jacksonville, you immediately got a job at North Sand Mountain as the head basketball coach. Was that a learning experience for you? Did you feel like you were ready for it, or did you just tackle the challenge?
Well, with North Side Mountain at that time was Mr. Jim Kirby, and he had started me playing basketball at Rosalie in the 4th grade. And from the time I started to school, he kept telling me, as soon as you go hard, and to answer your question, it was a learning experience. I thought I knew what I was getting into, and I've told anybody that wants to listen, I wish I knew now what I thought I knew then. But it was, I was threw into the fire in a hurry. Paul Cooley told me one time, Coach Cooley said, when you get it done to you, boy, you remember it. And I got everything done to me that first 3 or 4 years that you could imagine. And I think it made me stronger, and it made me mentally tougher. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. We had some good teams, had some bad teams, but it was a really good learning experience.
Definitely. So, well, Coach, I want to ask you about you. I think you, to your grandkids, you're known as Big Poppy, right? How did you get that name?
Big Poppy, that's it. Yeah. How did I get it?
How did you get that name?
When the first one, before he got here, she was one of these kind that just kind of didn't want you to be something plain. And my dad and my grandfathers were Pauls, PAs. Their name was Paul Hicks. And I didn't feel like I wanted to be Paul Hicks because I didn't feel like I was worthy. And it's really, really funny. I'm a huge Boston Red Sox fan, and David Ortiz was playing, and he was Big Poppy, and I thought, that's pretty cool right there. So I actually got Big Poppy out.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's a good story. I just had read that in some kind of bio you had, and I thought that was very interesting. And of course, I'm sure you get to spend a lot of time with your grandkids. And I guess as being a coach, when you had your 2 kids growing up, especially Cole, you're busy coaching basketball and don't really get to, you miss out a lot. So I guess with having grandkids, you spend a little extra time.
Well, yeah, no, I was very, very fortunate. I actually didn't play ball, but she was a cheerleader at North Sand Mountain the whole time. And so, we were there together all the time, probably more than she wanted to be. And then Cole was my manager from the 4th grade up, and he was at every practice I was at. So I was very, very lucky. I got to see my kids grow up, and they were there with me at school every day. I told someone the other day, as all the times that we were at school together, we probably had lunch together maybe 5 times in all those years. But it was just the fact knowing that I was there and they was there. If they needed something, I was there. It was pretty cool. But I did get to spend a lot of time with my kids.
Yeah, well, that's a good story. Well, Coach, of course, let's go to talk about your time at North Sand Mountain. Of course, you was inducted to the Hall of Fame in 2016, but your time at North Sand Mountain, you were there for a number of seasons. I know that you went to the state tournament 3 times. I think you won 6 Jackson County tournaments titles, or 8 Jackson County tournament titles and 6 Sand Mountain tournament titles. So you had a great tenure. You won 750 games, over 750 now that you're back at Sylvania, but 462 of them at North Sand Mountain. And you had 2 stints at North Sand Mountain, 77 through, I think it was 93, and then 95 through 2003. And, of course, you got to coach Cole in high school. That had to be special.
It was really, really special. I've heard a lot of coaches say they don't want to coach their kids, but I wanted to. And we had very few problems. When he was younger, we had a couple of run-ins, and I was finally told him, I said, look, when we're on the floor, I'm coach. When I'm off the floor, I'm dad. How's that? And we had very little problem. One time on the varsity, I didn't think he was playing hard, blow going around, but one of the other kids came up to him and said, Coach, you're going to have to get off him. I was on him. And that was a great learning experience for me when one of the other kids come up and said, you're too hard on him. And but it was a lot of fun.
Well, Coach, your coaching style, I mean, of course, you push the ball up the floor. Is the biggest thing, are you real strict on the kids, or are you expect them to get out there and enjoy themselves and have fun?
A little of both. You can enjoy yourself and have fun and still do things correctly. A lot of people give our system a bad. They say, well, it's just run and gun and, it's just street ball. I've heard it called that. I've heard it called popcorn ball. But we are really very, very structured, and we put high expectations on our kids, especially during the off season. But when we go out on the floor, we want to have fun because life's too short not to have fun. I mean, if we're not having fun, and I tell them this, if you're not having fun playing basketball, you need to quit and go fishing or something. Find something that's fun. And I think our kids enjoy themselves. We didn't win as many this time as we wanted to, but our kids, I had several of our kids come up after the season and say they really enjoyed it, and they wish they had another year back. And our kids that are coming back have really put forth the effort so far in the off season that we've asked them to do. And so, we're having fun, but we're trying to do things right too.
Well, Coach, I think kind of the way I kind of look at it is your coaching style and the way you play basketball is, to me, it's kind of controlled chaos. I mean, you're structured, but you want to get out there because I've often seen where you'll get on to kids for not shooting the basketball when they have open looks. Well,
I know when I played, it was back. My son asked me one time if we had glass backboards when I played. But no 3-point. we were pretty big at Pisgah when I was there, and it was we played a very controlled. And we're gonna pound the ball inside every time down the floor. And I'll be honest, I don't know how much fun I had. I love playing the game. The biggest trouble I got in high school, me and my best friend, both he was from Rosalie also. Coach Tinker didn't want us playing pickup ball. We would leave practice, run home, get a bite to eat, and go up to the gym at Rosalie and play pickup until 9, 10 o'clock. So and I never understood why coaches wanted me to work on my jump shot, and I never got to shoot it during the game. Now we tell our kids, we're gonna hold you to. You don't have to get out there and go to work and, get your shots up before we're going to give you the green light. But if we put you in the game and you're open, we expect you to shoot it. It also gives us a little bit of leeway, too, when we can look after 2 games and say, hey, you're shooting 24% from the 3. You think you might need to get in the gym a little bit and get a little better.
Yeah, hey, I understand. Well, Coach, back in, of course, you had those teams that were scoring machines back somewhere around the 1990 to 1993 range. And I saw where y'all kind of called it the system. And I was wondering, around that time, Paul Westhead was the coach at Loyola Marymount, and Hank Gathers and Bo Campbell were household names. Was that kind of the way your offense was structured around?
It was exactly the way it was structured around. I had an assistant coach that got a head coaching job. He went to a clinic and saw Westhead. He come back and told me, he said, Hicks, you crazy enough to do this. Well, I looked at it and I thought, I'm not, that's not going to work. And I had already decided that I was getting out of coaching and I was going to be a principal because I'd already sent my paperwork in to take the classes and things. And the more I got to thinking about it, I thought, I'm just going to call Coach Westhead and, talk about this. Well, this is back before cell phones, all that. I called information in Los Angeles. He was listed. I called him one Saturday about lunch, and his wife answered the phone, and I told her who it was. I said, "Ma'am, I hope you don't think I'm too crazy," but I told her the deal, and she said, "Paul will love talking to you because he's as crazy as you are." And said, "But he's doing the granddad thing right now." Said, "I'll have him call you when he gets in." And I thought, well, I'll never hear from him. He called me back, and we talked for about 3 hours. And then when we implemented the system, one of his assistant coaches would call me every Monday morning about dinner every time he'd call me. But when they got in the office on Monday morning, Coach Prada or Coach Woods would call me and ask how we did if we needed anything. So we were Loyola Marymount. And talk about Hank Gathers, he passed away in 1990 in the 89-90 season. We were preparing to play at Auburn in the state tournament, and our kids asked if they could wear black armbands in honor of Gathers. And our school took up a collection, and it wasn't a whole lot of money. It was around $200, and we sent it to the Hank Gathers scholarship fund or whatever they were having out there at that time. So we were really close to Coach Westhead in Marymount. As a matter of fact, I talked to Coach Westhead about 6 months ago. First time I talked to him in a long time, and he's doing well out in Southern California.
Well, that's good to hear. I didn't realize that. I just kind of sort of put 2 and 2 together because that was about the time. Of course, y'all led the nation one year, 92 and 93, I think, averaged 111 points per game. And that was, at the time where Loyola Marymount was running wild, and they were household names. It was so fun to watch them play.
It is. And they were really, I can't emphasize enough how much they did for me. And they just, Coach Westhead just poured everything he had. And at the time we were doing it, he said there was only one other school in the nation that was actually running the system. It was somewhere in South Dakota, North Dakota, something. And he had talked to them a little bit, but I think they just kind of adopted us. I got tapes, I got handouts from them, and it was just a blessing. And I have to mention the other guy that helped me so much with our system was QK Carter at Scottsboro. Coach Carter was just he was a tremendous mentor.
Coach, playing at Sylvania during that time, I was on the opposite end of a lot of those 111-point games, and I remember quite a few of them very well.
Well, we were very, and some of those teams that we had, they would have been successful, if we'd been running Princeton. We had some really good players. It was, I've often told people that, some of those teams at Northside Mountain and even at Dade County overcame bad coaching and won games, but they had fun, that was, I remember when I was at Dade, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution came up and did an article on us, and we looked like a refugee team. The biggest kid we had was 6'2", and he went about 155. My two guards were 5'7" and probably weighed 130 apiece, but they could flick it as soon as they crossed half court. And they come up and did an article, and the guy looks at me and he goes, "Coach, you're not going to intimidate anybody, are you?" I said, "No, we're not. We don't pass the eye test." But he asked my point guard, he said, "If Coach come in and told you guys that we were going to play a different way, how would y'all take it?" And I'll never forget it. He looked him in the eye and he said, "I quit." He said, I don't want to play anymore. And the guy, he ended the article with a quote that I've used in a lot of clinics that I've been fortunate to do. He said, "If there's such a thing as reincarnation," he said, "I pray that God sends me back as a two guard at Dade County."
Hey, that's good stuff. Well, Coach, I want to ask you this. you've been a coach a long time, you've been a teacher a long time. Do you consider yourself a better teacher or a better coach, or do you kind of implement both?
I think to be a good coach, you got to be a good teacher. And I'm close to most all of my players that have played for me, but I'm close to a lot of students that didn't even play. That one of the best compliments that I think I've ever got is I had a teacher that she went on to teach in college, and she didn't tell me this while I was teaching at North Sand Mountain, but I bumped into her one day. She said, "I just want to tell you something." She said, "I used to walk down the hall when you were teaching history and stop and listen to you." I think you got to be a good teacher to be a good coach. And most coaches, we get a bad rep sometimes, and the only thing we're doing is, the athletic part of it. But kind of like Coach Cooley at Pisgah said, and I think he kind of stole this from Coach Bryant. He said, we have a final exam 2 nights a week. How many times does a math class have to show out in front of the community? So I don't know. I've never considered myself a good coach. I really haven't, and I still don't. If I have a strength, I've got kids to buy into playing together, and so I don't know. I may be a better teacher. I don't know. Not a good teacher, but if you had to pick one, probably a better teacher.
Well, Coach, you and I know wins and losses are very important. Everybody wants to win, but at the end of the day, there's more to playing basketball or playing competitive sports than wins and losses. You want these kids to be winners in life, and that's actually your job.
Exactly. I have a picture of Pat Summit up on our door going in the locker room. And she says the same thing, said winning's important, but it's not the most important thing. Wanting to win is, and willing to work to win is the most important thing. And, that like the kids at Sylvania, they did everything we asked them to do this year. They did everything we asked them to do. And, I still think the best coaching job I ever did was in 1988 at North Sand Mountain. I started 2 freshmen, 2 sophomores, and a junior, and we finished 13-12. And I still think that's the best. I think that's the best coaching job I ever did. The years that we were going 29-4 and 27-3 and stuff like that. Hell, I had Jamie Pruitt and Cole Hicks and Kerry Lacey. You roll the ball out of them guys and say, "Hey guys, let's play."
Yeah, and definitely. So, well, Coach, you've had some great players. That's what I wanted to get into, and you brought me right into that. And you've had, Jamie Pruitt, who's a successful coach now at Ider girls basketball. Kerry Ellison, he coaches at Pisgah. And there's been several. Of course, Cole Hicks. That had to mean a lot to him to get to come back and be the head coach at his high school. Because from what I understand, that's what he wanted to do.
He did, and when he was my assistant coach at Dade, North Sand Mountain offered him the job before that. And I told him, I said, "Cole, look," I said, you're going to go back there, and all those people are going to know you as Cole Hicks instead of Coach Hicks. And I said, no matter how good a job you do, you're Cole, not Coach. And what was so funny is I started substitute teaching after I retired up there, and I'm walking down the hall with him one day, and somebody hollers, "Hey, Coach Hicks." And I turned around, and the girl looks and says, "No, I'm talking to Coach Hicks right there." I said, okay. So he's the Coach Hicks now. Yeah, he's having a good time. He's having fun, and he's where he needs to be.
Yeah, that's good. And of course, that had to be rewarding for you too, to him getting that job, knowing that was his goal.
Well, I'm proud. I'm proud of all of my guys that played for me. I would say 95% of the guys that I've coached have been successful in life. And we got a few that fell to the wayside, and I don't know. I'm just as proud of the ones that are real estate agents, and I got one guy that's flipping houses in probably a multi-millionaire now. You know, he still calls me, and you know, whatever they do, like my grandson, he's and he was afraid I was going to be mad that he wasn't. He actually went to he goes to Chattanooga Christian, and he didn't make the junior high basketball team. He was so afraid I was going to be upset. I said, Cohen, I don't care if you ever play basketball. You want to do. You hadn't got to do. I mean, and so, you know, and I've never. I tell these guys every year, none of you guys are probably going to make a living playing basketball unless you go into coaching. So have fun at it, find what you want to do. And, well, you know, one of the things that, and I tell kids this all the time, the kids that I'm jealous of are the kids that can play musical instruments. I wish, I mean, I'd give anything to be able to play a musical instrument. My dad begged me to learn how to play music. And I thought it was more important to chase that little ball around. And I'd give anything now if I could just, I mean, anything, a trombone, a piano, anything. I'm jealous of those kids, and I tell them.
Hey, I understand. My grandfather always wanted me to play the piano, but I never even thought about that. Of course, he died when I was young. But if he would have been around, I may have. I don't know. And, you know, and you're right, Coach. You know, I played on the state championship football team, and that's not what's important. It don't make me a living. It hadn't made me a dime, but the experience has made me a better person. And that's, you know, that's what comes with playing athletics, I think.
Well, I think Coach Dye said it better than anybody. You know, sometimes guys, no matter what you do, you come up short. And you get slapped down, and there ain't nothing you can do but get up the next day and then get up again and get up again and get up again. And we talk to our guys all the time about, hey, what we're doing, we hope we're teaching you something about life, because, you know, you're gonna get out here one day and, you know, the light bill's going to be due, and the mortgage is going to be due, and the car's going to break down, and the baby's going to need diapers, and you ain't got but $100 in your bank account. What are you going to do? You know, hopefully you're going to say, you're going to go to your boss and say, hey, I need some overtime. Or, you know, it's not going to be one of these throw your hands up and quit.
Well, Coach, I wanted to ask you about something. You know, some coaches have a knack for kids that play for them go into coaching, or you're surrounded, you know, by people that you influence naturally. Of course, you know, Cole's influenced by you to become a coach. You got like Jamie Pruitt, who played for you. You know, there's been some great coaches that's come through at North Sand Mountain that are coaching now or have coached, like Tracy Vest and Tyler Van, Michael Wilburn. Adam Gilbert was even at North Sand Mountain at one time. North Sand Mountain's turned out some great coaches over the year. They're more known for basketball, but players like Tyler Van was a great football player at North Sand Mountain.
Well, you know, it's again, it's not for some kids are, you know, I think Kerry Lacey would have been one of the best coaches around, and I talked to him even when he got through playing with the Red Sox. He said, Coach, I just can't do it. You know, I knew Pruitt was going when he come to us in the ninth grade. I mean, I knew he was going to be. I knew Cole was going to be a coach. I knew Kerry Ellison was going to be one. You know, Kerry's older brother Lloyd played for me. He coached and then went into administration. I knew all these. You can see it in them because they seem to be soaking up a little bit more than the other players. You know, you can kind of see it in their eyes.
Well, Coach, I want to ask you this. Are you still as animated as you used to be? I can remember, and this is back when I used to do radio. I was doing a game. North Sand Mountain was playing against section at section. And it just one of those times, you know, there's always a time in a basketball game where the gym's completely quiet and somebody says something out loud that everybody hears, and, you know, and everybody just kind of sort of shocks everybody. But somebody in the stands said something out loud to you, and you kind of yelled back at them. And then you just turned around and went back into the huddle and just went back to coaching. Are you still as animated today as you were back then?
I'm afraid so. I do this and I think everybody does. We do things at a game that we would not think about doing somewhere else. We say things at a game that we wouldn't do anywhere else. But I had an incident this year that somebody kind of hollered out across the floor, and I just kind of told them what I thought, and but and that's me. It's kind of like Mr. Kirby when he hired me. He said, "Hey, I need somebody that's going to run this thing right," and he said, "I just need you to be you." I said, "Well, that's the only way I know how to be, Coach."
Well, yeah, that's great. Because I mean, a lot of times back when I used to call basketball games, of course, I quit calling around, I think it was 2003, doing a lot of games around the Jackson and DeKalb County area. It was always fun to come to your games because you were worth the price of admission a lot of times because it was just so fun to watch your teams and to watch you coach basketball.
Well, I think the one thing that I demand is effort. You give me 100% effort, and I don't guess you could ever give 100%, but you give me everything you got, and I'm not going to say anything about you turned it over. I'm not going to say anything about you missing shots, but I tell our guys there's two things you control: how hard you play and your attitude. And I also tell them they ain't but one blankety blank on the sideline. It's going to be not going to be on Sylvania's sideline. That's going to be me. You don't get no technicals. We had one technical foul this year, and it was a kid dunking the ball, and he can't even dunk. They called a technical before the game on him, and he can't dunk the basketball, but they called a technical on him. And that's the only tech we had this year.
How is anything you want to ask, Coach?
Yeah, Coach. Preparing for your against your teams back in the '90s when I played at Sylvania. Yeah, we know y'all was going to score a lot of points, but we also knew about the pressure defense that you was going to put on us. A lot of people don't realize that, but you emphasize defense a lot. Well,
those teams played a different type of defense than your conventional defense. I had coaches come say, "Well, I can't stand giving up a wide open layup." Well, the thing about it is, you may get one wide open layup, but force you into 3 bad shots and 3 steals. Those kids, we practice defense a lot, but sometimes it doesn't look like it. But we do emphasize defense. We try to show the kids that defensive pressure is going to lead to easy baskets. And that's one thing I tell our guys. I said, you guys want to. Everybody wants to score the ball. Think about this. If you got one offensive rebound a quarter, just one a quarter, and a putback, you're at 8 points right now. Now you get a couple of steals and layup, you're in double figures, and you ain't stepped outside the lane. And I think those kids at Northside Mountain bought into that. Well, the kids at Dade County did too. Now, I had 3 or 4 teams at Dade County that a lot of people don't know about because out of state, but they were like the Northside Mountain teams. I don't think they could have beat the 90 or the 93 team, and probably not Cole's 03 team, but we had some teams that could blow and go over there.
Also, talking about the defense and everything, what's the difference between coaching now to 15 years ago and even 30 years ago?
Parents.
That's the word, huh?
And I don't mean that ugly. And it's my fault and it's your fault. Our generation has made it too easy on these kids. They don't have to work. And defense is work. I mean, it's gut check time. And everybody wants to shoot the 3 ball. Everybody wants to go between the legs, behind the back. You don't have no trouble getting kids working hard on that. I have very little problem with parents because I'm straight up with them. I'll talk to them at any time other than about anything besides playing time. Anytime that we're not practicing or playing, I'll talk to them. But when I said parents, I didn't mean that ugly. I meant we have let these kids get lazy. That's the big difference. Kids are a little lazier. The second thing, and this may be even more important, these kids today have so much more to do than even when Cole played. But especially back in the 80s and 90s, there was nothing to, there was no video games, there was no computers, no internet. Now kids can. One of the funniest stories. I'm at Dade County, and this kid comes up to me and he says, "Hey, Coach, I'm thinking about coming out for basketball next year." And I look at him and I said, "Okay." I said, "Bud, have you ever played?" And this is the honest to God truth. He says, "No, but I play the Jordan video game, whatever it is." And he said, "I never lose." I just want to look at him and say, "Well, you need to tell Kusa and model that. See if that, if that really influences them." Luckily, the kid never came out, but I mean, I was stunned. I didn't know what to say.
One more quick question for you. Phil kind of touched on it earlier as far as your animation on the sideline, all that. You had a guy that helped you by the name of Eddie Kirby that could get real loud as well. Which one of y'all two could get louder or the loudest?
Probably Curb. He would. Anyway, we'll say he does. Okay. Me and that guy in high school basketball together. We were college roommates, and he coached with me for 17 years. So we go way back. As a matter of fact, his brother was my best friend for 12, or forever. Me and his brother went to school together for 12 years, and. But yeah, Curb could get animated too.
It was always fun watching him coach a game, just like it is with you, and standing on the sideline hollering, "Wolf it, wolf it,
wolf it, wolf it, wolf it." We're playing at Litchfield. Curb's coaching my big team, and I have to tell this. He'll probably, if he hears this, he's going to shoot me. But Curb's standing there, and of course he's up, hollering, hooping, and this guy sitting behind him hollers at him, said, "I wish you'd sit down and shut up." Well, before he turns around, Curb screams out, "Why don't you sit me down?" And he turns around, and this guy's about 6'7". He's got arms as big as our legs. He turns around, looks at me, and he goes, "Don't let him hit me." I said, "So there ain't nothing I can do about it." I said, "He's bigger than I am too."
I know y'all had some great times up there coaching together, and actually coaching against each other occasionally when you was at Dade County, if I'm correct.
Oh, it was Tracy that was there when
okay.
When we played at Dade, and then we had a hiatus there for about 3 or 4 years that we didn't play. But the best one on Curb is the year I was at South Pittsburg. He comes over there and he's got 2 guys that can stroke it, and I played, believe it or not, I played a triangle and 2 for the whole game. Did not press a minute, and we beat him 2 points. And I remember when we shook hands, he looked at me, he said, "You tricked me."
I remember hearing some stories when I was up at North Side Mountain helping Coach Wilburn up there about you'd get aggravated with some of the officials, and sometimes you'd have some of your players to guard an official occasionally.
Well, we did that once, and State told me to do that again. And we did. We did. We come out, and the official asked, 2 of my guards just broke down on them. It's when there was just a 2-man crew. That guy said, "What are you doing?" Said, "Coach said to guard the guys that was killing us." And he said, "You're killing us." I got a little call from the state that told me I didn't need to do that again.
Yeah.
Oh, Phil, go ahead, man.
Well, Coach, I want to ask you, coaching basketball, was there one special moment that kind of stands out in your memory as far as a basketball game goes?
Probably 2. Well, after 49 years, as a lot. I'm thinking the 3 biggest was in 1990 when we beat Talladega County to go to state for the first time. We had been so close. We had lost to Hazelwood 2 times. when they were really good. But when we won that one at home, and winning the game was super. But everything that led up to it, our gym was packed 2 hours for the game. It was just, for great crowd support. Ron Ingram wrote that Northside Mountain might be the only school in America that could play in Phoenix, Arizona at 12 o'clock and pack the gym. Had great fan support. In 90, the next year, we go to Central of Florence, and we have moved up from 2A to 3A and lost 1, 2, 3 starters, I guess. Central of Florence has moved down from 4A and finished runner-up, I believe, 4A, and had 4 starters back. They were 6'9", 6'8", 6'7", and 6'4" across the but we were down 28-12 at the end of the first quarter. And I got mad and told them, I said, hell with this, we fixing to run and jump all over the floor. We caught them and beat them in overtime. And Jamie Pruitt, Kristen Anderson, and Ryan Higdon were 14 for 14 from the free throw line in the fourth quarter in overtime. It's the only way we won the game. That one stands out. And then beating Callaway when I was at Dade County, and Callaway had 5 Division I athletes, none of them basketball players. All 5 of them went football. I'm talking big time. They had one at Sign at Alabama, one at Auburn, one at Georgia, one at Florida State, and one at Georgia Tech. And we beat them in double overtime. And our biggest kid was 6'1", and it's just one of those that it was so funny. We had watched film on them. That's for you could get film anyway. We've got a couple of films, and I can't tell anything on film. And they got off the bus. Me and Cole standing there as they get off the bus, and they're walking in. And they're 6'11" and 6'7" and 6'5", and they walk in the gym, and me and him just kind of look at each other. I'll never forget it. Pardon my language. He looked at me and he said, "Dad, our ass is in trouble tonight." And but we fought and fought and fought and fought. We were down 10 points with 57 to go, and tied it up and put it in overtime. Banked a shot in it overtime to put it in the second overtime, and by the grace of God, the basketball God shined on us, and we upset them. But those 3 right there are probably the 3 highlights as far as just games.
Yeah, that's great stories. Coach, of course, you finished your, first-time career at Fort Payne, and you talked about that it was great coaching at Fort Payne. I know you had one team that got to the regional tournament, but there's a coach that helped you there, Lance Hedrick. How has he helped you? He was with you at Fort Payne. Now he's with you at Sylvania. Has he been a big help for you on your staff?
Coach, yeah. Well, now Hendricks also, now he even goes back further than that. He did his practice teaching at Northside Mountain, and then helped me up there as volunteer assistant for a year. And then he got out of his dad had a painting business, and he went into that. And when I got the job at Fort Payne, he had just taken the assistant's job at Pisgah. And I drove to Rosalie and found him. I said, "Man, I knew he'd go just back in this thing." He said, "Yeah." And I said, "You just need to go back to Pisgah and resign." I said, and come to Fort Payne with me. Well, he didn't for a year. They kind of pink slipped him next year, and I gobbled him up within the first 24 hours. He was gone. And he is one of the few. Him and Cole are the only 2 assistant coaches that I've ever had that will look at me and say, "You can't do that." Even Curb, he wouldn't do that. But Lamar and Cole both, they'll look at me and tell me what I need to hear, but you don't want to hear, And he's a great friend, and a heck of a good basketball coach too. I'm lucky to have him.
Yeah, Coach, I want to ask you about this. Of course, you were inducted into the Jackson County Sports Hall of Fame. I think it was at 2016 or 17. What did that mean to you? Because that means you're recognized by your peers. What did you think about that moment?
I thought they got drunk and gone crazy doing something like that. I asked him when Greg called me. I said, "Are you sure?" And it's great. It's an honor to be in there with. You got CB Strickland who helped me, and you Paul Cooley, and QK Carter, and just to name those guys like that. And then, my high school coach Wallace Tinker was in there, and just guys that I've looked up. Roger, of course, Roger and Jamie went in this time, but Ray Maxwell, I was in the ninth grade when Ray was a senior at Pisgah, and it was just, you look up to those guys, and all of a sudden, you're in the same organization they're in, and I'm the least deserving person in that Hall of Fame, I promise, because I've had all of my guys would have been in there. But it was really special because I went in the same year that Kerry Lacey and Kerry Ellison. We got to go in together.
Yeah, that's crazy. Of course, you've got to be happy for like Kerry Lacey. Of course, Jamie Pruitt winning state championship Ider girls basketball. I know that's been a long time ago for here. That had to be special. I know we've had him on the show here, but you had to feel good for him too.
Well, we're standing here at the house watching it, and Felicia watching the game, and I couldn't watch the game because I was pacing, and it's worse watching, especially Cole play than it is me coaching, because I just get so tore up when his teams play, and when he got beat by Gaston this time, I think I was more upset than he was. But these guys, I'm so proud of them, and the things that I told. I was the one that in 2016 when I went in, they asked me to deliver the induction speech or the acceptance speech or whatever, and I told them, I said, just we're sitting up here on this stage. But we're the fortunate ones. We owe you, because look what basketball has let me do that I wouldn't got to do. I'm a little bitty snotty nosed skinny kid from Rosalie, Alabama, that I've met Paul Westhead. I met Pat Dye. I don't may not mean a whole lot to other people. I got to shake John Wooden's hand one time. I mean, that was just that was just out of this world. But it's let me do so many things that I wouldn't get to do if it hadn't been for basketball. And I was a terrible player. I was really, really bad.
Yeah, well, Coach, that's some great stuff. Naturally, and I also want to ask you about one thing. One other thing is, when you see a kid, I'm sure you look at kids and you see something special in them. But when you're on the basketball floor, or even in practice, and when you see the kids actually get it, that light comes on, that has to be a special moment, not only for you, but for them too.
Well, we got a couple of kids right now that have we kind of started a incentive program for off-season shots, and one of them told me today. I was talking to him. I said, "You're not very far away from getting your T-shirt, brother." He said, "Yeah." He told me. He said, "Coach, said it's the first time in my career that I feel like I'm really a basketball player." And stuff like that means more than the wins and losses.
Oh, definitely so. Definitely so. I've been in radio for a long, long time, and when I hear stories of maybe something I've said or on the scoreboard show, something we've said that makes others feel better about themselves, that's what makes this worthwhile. It's not the money. It's not any kind of fame, because this is all about what I do. It's about the community. It's about coaches. It's about kids, because this don't last very long. In high school athletes, it's a very short time, but they need to be put on a pedestal while they're playing, because it has long lasting effects in life, and you want them to have a positive reinforcement when they get out in the real world.
Well, one of my favorite movies of all time, believe it or not, is Hoosiers. There's a scene there where the female teacher says something said on Friday nights here, these kids that play basketball are treated like gods. And the coach looks and says, most people would give anything they had to be treated like a god for 15 minutes. I mean, you know, that's and you know, we try to talk to them about this, and you know, hey, these same people that are praising you right now, that you miss that layup and did the ball game, they're gonna be the ones telling you how bad you are. So you got to take the good with the bad, or the bad with the good, or whichever way you want to look at it.
Yeah, Deb. So, you know, and Coach, I don't know how you feel about this type of thing. I think, you know, even at the higher level of coaching, sometimes coaches get way more credit than they deserve because, like, I'm a season ticket holder for football, you know, and say Josh Heupel's on one sideline and Nick Saban's on the other sideline. I don't care what they're doing. I'm interested in those kids that are inside that white line playing. That's who I'm rooting for, and that's who I want to see do well. I could care less what's going on outside those lines.
Right. Well, you said it right. We get way too much credit and way too much blame when we lose. I remember at North Sun Mountain one time I had a guy told me, and we had a team that was about a 500 team, and he told me, he said, Coach, you need to be running that same offense you ran when Pruitt and them was here. And I just looked at him, I said, I am. And he looked at me, and I said, it looks a whole lot better with Jamie Pruitt and Craig Carroll than it does Joe and Bill there. You know, my dad told me when I started coaching, he said, son, I want you to remember one thing. You can take an old mule and carry him down, feed him the best oats, put the best saddle and bridle on him, let him sleep in the best barn every night. And when it comes Kentucky Derby time, that thoroughbred's fit to kick his butt. And, you know, that's it. So sometimes you try to get the most out of a kid. And I think one of the things that I've always done, and I think you can ask Jamie and Kerry and Cole, those guys like that, I've always coached my best players harder than I did anybody else because I know they, you know, it doesn't do no good to holler at this little boy over here that can't play. I mean, there's no need to holler at him. He's not going to get any better. You can holler to Cole Hicks and tell him he's lazy, better get your butt in gear. And, you know, he responds a little bit.
Definitely so. Well, Coach, I want to ask you about something. And we lost one person. I mean, of course, all through everything you do, you lose people. But, you know, Dwayne Patterson, you know, he was inducted into the Jackson County Hall of Fame this year. I'm on the board of the DeKalb County Sports Hall of Fame, and he's being inducted this year. But we lost him, you know, back in January. You know, he was an outstanding sports reporter, and I'm sure he covered a lot of your basketball games.
I was Dwayne Patterson. Kerry Baker brought Dwayne Patterson into my office and said, this guy's going to start covering basketball. And I thought, this is another one of these fly-by-night guys. He's going to cover 2 games. He's going to get sick of it and quit. But I don't know if you know or not, Dwayne had asked me to do one of these eulogies at his funeral. And I told that story, and I said, I'm this guy. And he looked like a Scrappy Doo on the Scooby-Doo, you know,
yeah.
And come bouncing in. And Dwayne Patterson, to me, he was one of the greatest. I told him, I said, your talent is wasted around here. You need to be writing for Sports Illustrated or somebody. He had a way of taking, and this is what I said at his funeral, he had a way of taking what I said and make it sound good without changing the meaning of it, you know. And he was a great sports writer, but he was a good person and he was a better friend.
Well, you know, I think, you know, God puts you in certain places, and I think he was put here for a reason. You know, Jason Bowen is a pretty good sports writer in his own right. And, you know, I think both of them could write on a higher level. But, you know, if you really think about it, when it comes to sports around here, girls and boys, both football, basketball, girls basketball, softball, you know, we're in a mega hub of competitive sports. You know, like I told Jamie Pruitt, like I told Coach Pruitt at Ider when they won the state championship, if you can get out of your backyard, which is out of your area, you got a chance to win a state championship, and that's probably the most difficult thing to do.
Well, that just look at James at Northside Mountain. He does a heck of a job. He got a heck of a team. He's in the region with Pisgah and Ider. I mean, there's every year there's going to be one of those teams that, and then you also down the road section ain't bad.
No.
Their girls have been down a little bit, but coach is doing a great job of them getting them back up. And you're exactly right. If you can get out of Jacksonville or get to Jacksonville, probably you're going to have to turn around and it's just like Pruitt this time had to turn around and play Cary. And every time out of that, I said then, this championship, right?
Yeah, because those teams will be in it again next year. Of course, Ider drops to 1A, and they'll have to contend with Spring Garden, but Cary's going to be in the hunt in 2A again. So, it is so competitive in this area. And of course, we're blessed to have that. It makes my job in sports a whole lot more fun because the biggest thing is, Coach, and you talked about it at North Sand Mountain. Our fan interest is first rate around this area. All these schools are so community supported.
That's one of the things that, and I've been so fortunate in everywhere I've been, other than South Pittsburg, which they didn't even realize they had a basketball team up there. But everywhere else I've been, the fans are they're there. And naturally, the more you win, the more people are going to be there. But you've got your core group that's going to be there. If you're, if you're 0-13, they're still going to be there.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, Howard, is there anything else you want to add? And we'll try to let him get out of here.
Yeah, Coach. I'm trying to think back. Was this year the first year that you had the opportunity to coach against Cole?
To coach against Cole?
Yes.
No, we had played twice when I was at Fort Payne. He was at North Jackson, and we beat him twice there. And it was just also I had a better team. Well, he beat us. He wore us out the first two times we played, but we upset him at Sylvania. And I told him after the ball game, he was standing outside. We were talking. I just walked up to him and I said, "It's still 3-2, big boy."
That kind of made for an awkward Christmas/New Year's there, didn't it, Coach?
Not really. I mean, Bowen. I blame Bowen for the front when I was at Fort Payne because they blew it out of proportion, and it made it really uncomfortable for me and him. But this year, it was just, hey, we're gonna play, and when the game starts, believe it or not, you never realize who's down the other end. As a matter of fact, this year, he said something to one of the referees, and I said, "What's he whining about?" And referee looked at me. He said, "What?" And I said, "What's he whining about?" And he kind of gave me that look. I said, "That's my son. I can ask that." What's he? He said, "Y'all were getting across the lane too quick." And I said, "He's a crybaby. Quit listening to him."
Me and Phil did the Jackson County tournament, and I had a chance to interview Bubba Smith over there right before him and Woodville and Pisgah played. And I said, "Coach, do you know much about the opposing coach?" He just kind of laughed. He said, "I've known him for a year or two." So I guess it's the same thing with you and Cole.
Well, what's funny is that actually, and this happened at Fort Payne. When we even called back then, we even called the offenses and everything the same. Well, North Jackson runs something. I mean, 4-0 or whatever they ran, and my guys played the play and they back cut him or done something. They laid it up, and I said something to him at the timeout, and he looks at me. He said, "Coach, they didn't run 4-0 right." So we kind of knew what he was doing.
Yeah, kind of changing things up because they knew what she was going to be doing. Let's talk a little bit about Sylvania real quick. Being at Sylvania, getting to share a court with Coach Finch there. That's got to make your day being able to share a court with him.
Finch ain't right now. Finch might be the only man in Cobb County crazier than I am. We do got a great working relationship, and it's he's so easy to work with too. I mean, it's one of these things that, Coach, what time you want to practice? You tell me what time you want to practice. I'll fill in. I said, well, is it okay if I go first Thursday? Yeah, Coach, that's good. I don't care. I mean, we've never had a cross word over that.
Yeah.
Only time we really had a cross word is when he had scheduled Sardis one, and I'm down like 35-3. And I turned around and looked at him. I said, "You can come back down here if you want to. I ain't coming back."
So I guess a little input on the schedule this year, huh?
He can play all in 5A schools he wants to. I don't have to play a 5A school. I can find plenty of 1, 2, and 3A's to play.
What about your region coming up, or your area coming up this year? That was announced a couple of weeks ago. What do you think about that?
I feel like it's going to be really competitive. Me and Brian at 5 were talking the other day. That there's conceivably it could be a 4-way tie at 3-3. I think all 4 teams. I know Geraldine's probably the favorite right now. Crossville's got the big kid. They got a good team, and Dustin's got the Cox kid, and he's got a good team coming. We feel like we're going to be a whole lot better. So, that's a great thing about basketball. It's one on the floor. It's not one. You can draw it up on paper, and it means nothing. I think it's going to be really competitive, and just maybe who wants to win the worst. Not that, kind of like Coach Knight. Everybody wants to win on game night. Who wants to win in the spring?
Absolutely. And, my daughter's in the band there at Sylvania, and I talked to a lot of people up there. And Mr. R, band director up there, he thinks very highly of you. He, when me and him talk, he always talked about y'all two talking about different things, and you're well received there at Sylvania. I can tell you that much.
Well, me and R may be the 2 best parking lot supervisors you've ever seen. Just go up there and check that parking lot out. But the gym, on the line fishing, none of the asphalt's gone. We have protected that parking lot expertly this year.
Yeah, I can see y'all out there protecting that parking lot.
That's the safest place on campus.
Yeah, I can imagine so. And so, Coach, Phil, do you have anything else?
Well, Coach, I want to ask you about something. I kind of sort of was scanning through and looking at a few things. It's I kind of noticed that you had a few pictures you'd shared of Al McGuire. Is he a big basketball analyst of yours? When I was growing up and I started doing basketball, I always loved to listen to Al McGuire. That's just like in football. I liked Era Parsegian. That was 2 voices I enjoyed hearing. Are you a fan of Al McGuire's?
McGuire influenced my coaching. I was a Marquette fan because of McGuire, and we used to have, back when they let you do it, with the shirt tails out at North Center Mountain, we always wore the Marquette uniform. Now McGuire was here's the thing about McGuire. McGuire wanted you to think he was the dummy standing over in the corner, and what he was doing was figuring out a way how he's going to beat your butt. I just liked his attitude. I liked the way he carried himself.
Oh, definitely. So, and when he was an analyst, I mean, he knew his stuff, and he wasn't no dummy. I mean, he knew basketball, and, just like me, I never really played competitive basketball, but I know the kind of the flow of the game. But he was always good to educate you on the X's and O's of what was actually going on. And because I've never been a real basketball player, so I don't know the X's and O's of basketball, but he did.
Hey Phil, we dropped Coach for a second. You might want to repeat that again. We dropped him when we were talking about.
Is he back?
Yes.
I'm back. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just finishing up coaching with Coach McGuire. When I was watching him, he knew so much about the X's and O's of basketball. He's very smart man. And, I've called basketball. I don't know that much about it, but he was one of them I used to listen to because he knew so much about the game.
he was, and he was, one of the things that I've tried to copy from McGuire. He always said this: don't let basketball use you, use basketball. And, he was one of the first that he wanted all his kids to get a degree. And one of the things that impressed me was, back during that time, they had the Hall Brass and Jim Jones, who was probably the best big guy in the nation. He told Jones, said, "You are not welcome back at Marquette next year. You got to go into the draft." And Jones said, "Why?" And he said, "Jim, open my refrigerator. My refrigerator's full. Open, there's nothing in it." He had the kids' best interest at heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Coach, if I'm not
definitely
mistaken,
so.
big Bob Huggins fan as well, right?
I love her. Yeah, I'm a coaching fan. I love. Like I say, I'm not an Alabama fan, Coach. I love what he does. I just the coaches that actually get out there and get her done. I like it. I like the Hug. He's you're gonna play defense for Huggins, or you ain't gonna play.
Hey, Coach, this is Randall. I just wanted to sneak in with one question. Big change at Sylvania this year. Have you got to spend any time with Coach Nelson since he's arrived?
I have. Yeah, I think he fits in really well. Of course, losing Tyler. Tyler was one of my boys. He never did play for me, but I knew him. His dad played for me, taught his mother, and of course, his mother-in-law played for us, and then Tracy and I coached together forever. I hate to lose him, but I think Coach Nelson's going to be is a great fit. He got some big shoes to fill, but he's working hard. Kids like him, faculty likes him, and he's hit the ground running, and he's going to do all right.
Well, thank you, Coach. How are you want to close this out?
I think so. Phil, you got any more questions?
No, I just, Coach, I appreciate you coming on. I've never really got to meet you formally. I've caught a lot of your basketball games, and we've kind of sort of passed and maybe shook hands or something, but we've never met formally. But I've always admired you. I've admired the game you coach. It's always fun to watch your team, but I sure do appreciate you coming on and sharing stories because, that's what this is all about.
Right. Well, guys, I tell you, anytime you guys want to come by Sylvania, the gym until 11:36. That's when I contract to 11:37. Don't get in the parking lot. I'll run over you. But we'd love to have you guys stop by and holler at us one day.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Coach Hicks, thanks for joining us, and we're going to have you back on here very soon, especially when basketball rolls back around.
Sounds good, and go Rams.
Thank you, Coach, for joining us. Bill, great having Coach Hicks on the air tonight, and got to hear some of the stories that I've heard at North Mountain. And he elaborated a little bit more on some of the reasoning behind them, and it was great to hear the full story.
Oh yeah. Because you hear bits and pieces about him, but that's what's fun about getting them on here is you find a few tidbits and then they add to it, and that's what makes this fun because you learn a little bit about people, and I think even people that's played for him don't know him that well, and they learn a few things about him because that's and you could tell he got comfortable and he opened up and was willing to share stories, and that's great. I love that part of this. Yeah,
I was part of Michael Wilburn's assistants back for 4 years at North Mountain, and from Coach Vest to Coach I've gone blank, Coach Kirby and Coach Vest and some of the other guys that's been up there for years. They had told me about Hicks getting mad and having his players guard the officials. I never heard why, and then he elaborated on why it took place, and so finally hearing the full story is good, and big things on the horizon at Sylvania. It seems like sounds like he's real pleased with his team so far.
Yeah, of course, year one's a learning experience for him and also them, but then they'll figure out what to expect and and they'll be pretty good year 2. And of course, the good thing is they don't have to deal with Plainview now, and the area they're in is very competitive. And because coming in year 1 at Sylvania, there's some good basketball teams around him. This is one of those years where normally Sylvania is very competitive in basketball, but when you look at who's around you right now, Fife's been pretty good. Of course, Plainview's been good. So maybe Sylvania has caught up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. He misspoke a little bit earlier. He said Crossville, but he meant Collinsville. So it's going to be a famous day. Sylvania, Fife, Geraldine, and Collinsville in the same area. And wow, that's a good area. That's kind of like the girls division in the 2A from this past year, with it being Section, Pisgah, North Sand Mountain, and Hyder.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You get out of that, it's like I say, you get out of that area, you got a chance. And of course, you're going to expect to see, probably you could see 2 out of the area, and you don't know which 2 that could get to Jacksonville. So there's no doubt about that, because, basketball, boys basketball in DeKalb County has really elevated itself lately. It's been gotten a lot better. Of course, a lot of times maybe they don't, win down at Birmingham and whatnot, but they're successful at Jacksonville now. We're used to it was one and done down there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Bill, good show. Enjoy.
Hey, guys, I just want to interrupt for a minute and say at halftime is 45-44 or 45-45, Iowa and LSU. Iowa jumped out to a big lead early on. LSU kind of come back, called back, took a lead, and then LSU, the last 5 minutes of that second quarter, just goes stone cold, and then Iowa pulls back even. Caitlin Clark is having a horrible night shooting. Angela Reese fell in the second quarter and looks like it tweaked her ankle, but she's been back into the game. But it has been a heck of a women's basketball game going into the third quarter.
We'll have to pick up the second half.
Yeah, absolutely. So Phil, thanks for letting me step in tonight for Randy. You can hear the voice of Randy. So hopefully feeling better. And so Phil, for Phil Harris, our producer, Randy Cunningham, I'm Howard Chaney. This is Beyond the Booth. Good night and God bless.